My sister gave a speech at my wedding, laughing as she said, and my sister only married for money. She's been chasing rich men since college. The guests laughed. Our mother even raised her glass and said, "Congrats, gold digger." But then, my groom stood up slowly. "And I says, that really true?" He pointed to the screen and said, "Watch this." The room fell silent. Dusk came early on a winter day in Boston. Light snow had begun to fall on the streets visible from the office building windows. Caroline Miller stood by the window, gazing at the distant view of her hometown. It had been a long time since she'd left the city, but after her success in Chicago, she had returned to Boston temporarily. "Miss Miller, the final report is ready." At the sound of her young colleague's voice, Caroline turned and gave a professional smile. "Thank you, Jason. I'll review it before tomorrow's final presentation." Her voice carried confidence and composure born of years of experience. As a financial analyst, Caroline excelled at reading the stories behind the numbers. It was her natural talent. On her way back to her luxury apartment after leaving the office, Caroline's cell phone rang. The word mother appeared on the screen, and after a moment's hesitation she answered. "Hi, Mom. Carrie, where are you now? I made dinner reservations with Brenda. We haven't had a proper conversation with you lately." Eleanor's voice had its usual lightness. "I'm sorry, Mom. I can't today. I have an important presentation tomorrow. Work again." Disappointment clearly mixed in Eleanor's voice. "It's always work, work, work. With you. Do you have any idea how much Brenda wants to see you?" Caroline closed her eyes and took a deep breath. "All right. How about tomorrow evening? I can make time after my presentation." After hanging up, Caroline stared out the taxi window. The discomfort she felt whenever she returned to Boston had to do with her family relationships. Her sister Brenda was the sunshine of the family, basking in their mother's affection. Caroline, described as too responsible and boring, lived in an entirely different world from her sociable sister who led a flashy lifestyle despite being siblings. Especially since college, Caroline had been continuously labeled a workaholic by her family. Since she began working in Chicago, that distance had grown even wider. It wasn't just physical distance. Back in her apartment, Caroline gazed at the night view from the large living room window. There was evidence of her recent joy and engagement ring sparkled on the ring finger of her left hand. Meeting Michael Hudson had changed her life. They had met a year ago when she was assigned to consult for his family's long-established furniture manufacturing company, Hudson Furniture. This company, with over 100 years of history, was facing crisis due to the recent economic recession. While analyzing the company's financial situation, Caroline also took deep interest in its history and the lives of its employees. Where a normal consultant would have suggested staff reductions and asset sales, Caroline was different. She proposed innovative strategies that preserved the company's traditional values while adapting to modern needs. She poured her heart into this work without telling anyone. Michael was deeply impressed by her approach of seeing people's lives beyond the numbers. Their relationship, which began as business partners, eventually blossomed into love. Michael loved her intelligence and kindness, while Caroline was captivated by his sincerity and passion. When they heard about the engagement, her mother and sister's reactions were unexpected. "Michael Hudson? Of that furniture company?" A calculating light appeared in her mother's eyes. "Well, Carrie, you've finally landed a big fish. Well done, sis." Brenda's voice had a sarcastic tone. "You've always made sensible investments." Though hurt by these words, Caroline said nothing. She knew they wouldn't understand that Michael's value to her had nothing to do with his family's wealth. In the quiet of her apartment, Caroline thought as she reviewed materials for tomorrow's presentation. As wedding preparations progressed, she felt uncomfortable with her family's attitude. Especially her sister Brenda, who kept asking strange questions, while her mother Eleanor repeatedly confirmed, "Do you really love Michael?" She closed the materials and stood by the window. A few stars twinkled in the distant sky. Caroline took a deep breath to calm herself. Tomorrow was an important day, a presentation to clients and dinner with her family in the evening. Her cell phone rang, displaying Michael's name. A natural smile spread across Caroline's face. Conversations with him were the only things that gave her true peace in this city. "What do you think of this?" Caroline smiled at the flower arrangement the wedding planner showed her. The elegant combination of white roses and baby's breath was close to what she had imagined. It's lovely. Let's go with this. Preparations for the wedding, now just 2 months away, were progressing steadily. The ceremony at a historic estate in the Boston suburbs was Michael's suggestion. The garden, passed down through generations of his family, would be adorned with beautiful flowers as spring arrived. After parting with the wedding planner, Caroline headed to meet her mother. Eleanor Miller had shown more interest than ever in her daughter's wedding. However, it wasn't a pleasant interest. Entering the upscale restaurant, she found her mother already seated. Brenda was also there beside Eleanor. The two seemed to have been deep in conversation before Caroline arrived, and abruptly stopped when she approached. "Carrie, you're late," Eleanor said, kissing her daughter's cheek. "Have you decided on your wedding dress yet?" "Yes, I went for a fitting last week," Caroline replied as she sat down. "It's a simple, elegant design." "Simple?" Brenda frowned. "Shouldn't you choose something more extravagant as the bride of the Hudson family? To meet their expectations?" Caroline was momentarily at a loss for words. "Michael liked my dress." "They? You're so lucky," her mother interrupted. "To be chosen by a man like Michael. How much is his family worth?" "Mom." Caroline lowered her voice. "Michael and I love each other. Money has nothing to do with it." Eleanor and Brenda exchanged meaningful glances. "Of course, Carrie," Eleanor said, taking her daughter's hand. "But do you really love Michael?" This was a question her mother had been repeating recently. She asked it in the same tone each time, as if checking. "I've told you many times." "Of course I love him," Caroline replied, suppressing her irritation. "But sis, you always talk about work, don't you?" Brenda said, tilting her wine glass. "What position will you get at Michael's company? Will you join management?" "We haven't discussed that." "I have my job in Chicago." "What? You're not planning to live apart after marriage, are you?" Brenda pretended to be surprised. "What's the point of marriage then?" Caroline took a deep breath. "We're still discussing it. Michael is attached to Boston, and his company is here. I can't easily give up my career in Chicago either. But, in the end, you'll follow his wishes, won't you?" Her mother smiled meaningfully. "That's your duty as a wife of the Hudson family." Caroline lost the will to argue. "Caroline, could you take a look at this?" Visiting Michael's office, Caroline looked at the documents he spread out. It was a new business plan for Hudson Furniture. Michael's proposal maintained traditional furniture manufacturing techniques, while incorporating more contemporary designs and environmentally conscious materials. "This is amazing, Michael. It will be a major transformation. It's all thanks to your advice." Michael took her hand. "I'm so happy we can build the company's future together." Looking into his sincere eyes, Caroline could forget the unpleasant conversations with her family. Michael respected her opinions and highly valued her talents. One more thing about the wedding, Michael's expression became somewhat mysterious. "I'm preparing a surprise. I'm sorry I can't show it to you yet." "A surprise?" Caroline tilted her head. "Can't you give me a hint?" "Then it wouldn't be a surprise?" Michael laughed. "But I can tell you one thing. I want people to know you better. Especially your family." Caroline felt puzzled. "My family? I'm a bit concerned about how they see you," Michael said quietly. "From what you've told me, they don't seem to understand the real you." "Yes," Caroline admitted in a small voice. "But that's been the case for a long time. I'm used to it." "You shouldn't have to get used to it," Michael said gently but firmly. "You deserve more recognition." Michael's words lingered in Caroline's heart, even after she left his office. The night before the wedding, Caroline was checking final preparations in a hotel room. Tomorrow's schedule, guest list, seating arrangements, everything seemed perfect. Yet anxiety swirled within her. A few days earlier, she had accidentally overheard Brenda's careless phone conversation. "Tomorrow will be fun." Her sister's voice had a malicious tone. "I can't wait to see Carrie's face when everyone realizes she's just after Michael's money." Even now, remembering those words hurt. Caroline had suffered from her family's misunderstandings for years. She had pursued a career in finance not because she wanted money itself, but because she found joy in unraveling the stories behind the numbers. And she loved Michael not for his wealth, but for his kindness, sincerity, and his recognition of her value. The phone rang, with Michael's name on the display. "Nervous?" His voice was warm and reassuring. "A little," Caroline answered honestly. "Tomorrow will be the best day," Michael said. "And everything will become clear." "What will become clear?" "It will be the day everyone learns what a wonderful person you are." Michael's words stayed with Caroline even after she hung up. He seemed to be planning something special. Despite the mixed feelings of anxiety and anticipation, she resolved to focus on tomorrow's happy occasion. Whatever happened, tomorrow would be Michael and her day. Not even her family's misunderstandings could take that joy away. Spring sunshine gently embraced the historic estate in the Boston suburbs. A white tent had been set up in the garden, with crystal chandeliers casting soft light. Upon hearing of the bride's arrival, guests turned with expectant faces. Caroline walked down the aisle strewn with rose petals, her hand resting on her father's arm. Her dress was simple yet elegant, with delicate lace patterns that sparkled in the sunlight. At the end of the aisle, Michael waited for her. His eyes held deep affection, and his gaze was warm as he looked at Caroline. The ceremony was solemn and heartwarming. After exchanging vows, the newlyweds headed to the reception hall amid the blessings of their guests. In the elaborately decorated hall, champagne flowed, and laughter echoed everywhere. Caroline felt true happiness for the first time in her life. Michael's hand firmly held hers, its warmth giving her reassurance. As the celebration reached its peak, the MC took the microphone. "Now, we'd like to hear a speech from the bride's sister, Brenda Miller." As the venue fell silent, Brenda stood up. Dressed in a flashy emerald green dress, she accepted the microphone with a confident smile. Caroline maintained her smile, despite feeling a small twinge of anxiety. "Everyone, we've gathered today for my sister Caroline," Brenda began in a bright voice. "But to be honest, Carrie, I never thought you'd see this day." Small laughter rippled through the venue. Caroline gave a wry smile. "My sister has always been serious and sensible. Since college, she's been completely devoted to studying and working." Brenda paused momentarily, then changed her tone. "Actually, everyone, my sister has always been after rich men. She decided to enter the financial industry since college, and this marriage is just another attempt to get money." The venue erupted in laughter. Many guests seemed to take it as a joke between sisters, but pain shot through Caroline's chest. She looked at Michael, whose expression was hard, as if he was thinking about something. "Since her teens, Carrie always said, 'I'm going to marry the CEO of a top company,'" Brenda continued cheerfully. "And look, she's finally fulfilled her dream." Caroline wore a frozen smile. All of Brenda's words were lies. What she had dreamed of as a teenager was contributing to society with her talents, not marrying a rich man. Suddenly, her mother Eleanor stood up, raising her champagne glass high. "Well done, you gold digger. You've finally succeeded." The atmosphere in the venue froze for a moment. Caroline's close friends looked confused, and Michael's family exchanged uncomfortable glances. However, many guests laughed it off as a joke and continued their conversations. Caroline sat rigid in her seat. Her cheeks flushed red, and tears welled in her eyes. She had endured misunderstandings from her family for years, but never imagined being exposed this way in public on the most important day of her life. At that moment, Michael slowly stood up. There was dignity in his posture, and the venue's attention turned to him. "Is that really true?" Michael's voice was quiet, but carried a power that resonated throughout the venue. Brenda and Eleanor looked surprised by the sudden intervention. "I'd like everyone to see who Caroline really is." Michael pointed to a screen at the back of the hall. At his signal, the venue lights dimmed, and images appeared on the large screen. The first footage showed Hudson Furniture's founding anniversary party. Caroline was seen talking amicably with Michael and other employees. She was speaking passionately about the company's community support project, and it was clear the employees were impressed by her ideas. The scene changed to a business magazine interview featuring Hudson Furniture as this year's most innovative company revival. Caroline appeared as an anonymous strategic advisor, discussing the company's values and management philosophy that prioritized employees. When the interviewer asked Michael, "What's the secret behind this remarkable recovery?" he answered with a sincere expression. Without her presence, this company wouldn't exist today. Her ability to not only analyze finances, but also recognize the value of each employee and harmonize tradition with innovation, is invaluable beyond words. The venue was silent. Finally, graphs and charts showing the company's performance were displayed. They showed the trajectory of a company on the brink of bankruptcy returning to industry leadership. Each turning point noted Caroline's innovative ideas. The final slide read Caroline's value to Hudson Furniture, incalculable, along with a collection of warm moments of her interacting with employees and customers. When the video ended, a deep silence spread across the venue. Tears glistened in many guests' eyes. And Michael's parents looked at Caroline with proud expressions. Brenda and Eleanor sat speechless. Confusion and embarrassment were visible on their faces. Caroline was crying too. But these weren't tears of humiliation or sadness, they were tears of deep emotion. She was profoundly grateful that Michael had publicly recognized her talents and contributions in this way. Michael stood beside Caroline and firmly held her hand. "This is the person I fell in love with," he said quietly but powerfully. "A true savior of Hudson Furniture, full of talent, intelligence, and compassion." Warm applause erupted from the venue. Around Caroline and Michael, a circle of people who truly understood her value had formed. Brenda and Eleanor's plan had completely backfired. They had tried to ridicule Caroline as marrying for money. But in reality, she was the valuable one for Michael and his family. Michael took the microphone again and began speaking quietly. "What I'm about to tell you is something even Caroline doesn't know. The day she first came to our company, we were on the verge of bankruptcy. Thanks to her proposal, we avoided laying off employees and restored our relationship with the community. At first, I couldn't understand why she worked so devotedly for us," Michael continued, his voice slightly choked. "When I realized it was because she found value in bringing meaning to people's lives, not in money or fame, I fell in love with her." A wave of deep emotion spread through the venue. Caroline wiped away tears and stood up, leaning into Michael's arms. Michael took Caroline's hand and had her stand beside him. His eyes were filled with pride and love. "Meeting Caroline changed my life," he began speaking quietly, looking around the venue. "When she first visited our company, Hudson Furniture, with its 3 generations of history, was about to close its doors. Swallowed by the economic downturn, we had asked her to analyze our finances as a last hope." Michael smiled slightly. An ordinary consultant would have recommended selling assets and cutting stuff. In fact, other experts did just that. But Caroline was different. She saw the people's stories behind the numbers. Caroline blushed slightly. Michael gripped her hand more firmly. The recovery plan she created wasn't just a financial strategy. It was about protecting people's lives and dignity. With her proposal, we were able to rebuild the company without laying off a single employee. At first, I couldn't understand why she was so dedicated. Michael took a deep breath. "I was truly confused when she refused bonuses and additional compensation. Later I learned that Caroline's grandfather had worked at our factory when he was young. During a recession, my grandfather at the time invested his personal assets to protect employees. Thanks to that, Caroline's grandfather could continue to support his family and send her father to college." A small murmur rose from the venue. Tears shone in Caroline's eyes. It was a story she had never told anyone. She wanted to repay that kindness. And she wanted to protect people's lives in the same way. I was deeply moved by her finding joy in bringing meaning to people's lives rather than in financial rewards. Michael gazed gently at Caroline. Attracted by her sharp insight and warm humanity, I fell in love with her. Caroline not only became the company's savior but also changed the meaning of my life. A wave of deep emotions spread through the venue. Caroline's friends showed mixed expressions of anger at her years of misunderstanding and joy that she was now being recognized. Meanwhile, Brenda and Eleanor sat sunken in their seats, speechless. Embarrassment and regret showed on their faces. Michael's parents stood up and approached Caroline. Joseph, Michael's father, was a dignified elderly gentleman. He took both of Caroline's hands. "Thank you for saving our family and company." His voice was filled with gratitude. "You are not just my son's bride, but a benefactor who protected our legacy." Elizabeth, Michael's mother, gracefully embraced her. "Nothing makes me happier than having you as part of our family." Wiping away tears, Caroline took the microphone. She felt something being released inside her heart. Thoughts she had suppressed for years were finally finding words. "Thank you, Michael," she began with a trembling voice. "And thank you everyone for being here today." Caroline took a deep breath. "For a long time, I had given up on having my value recognized. Since childhood, I was constantly told I was too responsible and boring, and after college, I was labeled a workaholic. Her gaze briefly turned to her mother and Brenda. I suffered from family misunderstandings for years but never put it into words. I was passionate about my work not for money, but because I found joy in problem solving. I found meaning in deciphering the stories behind the numbers. Caroline's voice gradually grew stronger. Meeting Michael was the first time I met someone who recognized my true value. He respected my way of working and thinking, treasuring it as valuable rather than viewing it as a boring or cold. She gave Michael a gentle look. And now, for the first time in my life, I know what true love is. It's accepting the other person as they are, and recognizing their true worth. Caroline directed her gaze to the entire venue. Family isn't necessarily just about blood ties. For me, family is Michael, his parents, and everyone at the company. They saw me for who I really am. Then she summoned her courage and looked at her mother and Brenda. The two couldn't raise their faces. But Mom, Brenda, I will always love you. I hope this can be a chance for us to build a new relationship. Caroline made a gesture as if reaching out. I want you to know the real me. The venue was silent. Tears glistened in many guests' eyes. Eleanor's shoulders trembled slightly, showing she was quietly crying. Brenda raised her face and looked at her sister. Her expression showed regret and sadness unlike anything seen before. Slowly, Eleanor stood up. She seemed unsteady, but she took one step, then another toward Caroline. Carrie. Her voice trembled. I'm sorry. Really, really sorry. Caroline walked toward her mother and embraced her. Eleanor buried her face in her daughter's shoulder and began crying intensely. I was wrong. I never tried to see your value, Eleanor said tearfully. Brenda also approached slowly. Embarrassment and regret showed in her eyes. Sis, she stumbled over her words. Caroline extended one hand and embraced her sister too. The three stood like that for a long time. Years of misunderstandings and hurt were beginning to heal in this moment. Michael approached and placed his hand on Caroline's shoulder. Deep affection dwelled in his eyes. This is what I wanted, he said quietly. I wanted everyone to know that you're truly a valuable person. Caroline smiled. Her smile had a radiance unlike ever before. There was a lightness, as if freed from a long-standing burden. Music began to flow through the venue again, and warm applause echoed. People resumed chatting, and the celebration continued. But something had decisively changed. It was a change within Caroline. For the first time she had found her place within her family and in society. Later, many guests would describe this wedding as a moving and a life-changing experience. It became not just a celebration of two people's marriage, but a special occasion witnessing a woman finding her true self and being recognized by those around her. As Caroline and Michael stood on the dance floor and began their first dance, a serene joy spread across her face. Around her, a circle of people who truly understood her value had formed. And for the first time she felt that this was rightfully her place. Spring sunlight streamed through the large windows of the Boston suburb home. Caroline smiled, holding a warm coffee and overlooking the beautifully maintained garden. A year had passed since the wedding, and her life with Michael had become more fulfilling than they had imagined. Finished reviewing the materials? Michael came out of the study and placed his hand on her shoulder. Yes, everything's ready. Caroline smiled at her husband. Today's announcement will be special. Not only did they jointly manage the company, but they had also launched a new program called Hudson Scholars. This program, which provided business education and practical opportunities for economically disadvantaged young people, was their most prideful project. Did you hear from Brenda? Michael asked. Yes, she'll be a bit late, but will definitely come. Caroline's voice had a warmth toward her sister that wasn't present before. After the wedding incident, Brenda had deeply reflected on her behavior and begun seeing a psychological counselor. Realizing that jealousy toward her sister and low self-esteem underlay her actions, Brenda was gradually trying to repair her relationship with Caroline. Recently, by volunteering for the scholarship program, she had begun discovering her own true talents. The doorbell rang, and when Caroline opened the door, her mother Eleanor stood there. She held a homemade apple pie in her arms. Mom, you came. Caroline embraced her mother. After the wedding, Eleanor had temporarily cut contact out of embarrassment. However, When she was suddenly hospitalized with an illness a few months later, Caroline rushed to help without hesitation. That dedicated care became the key to opening Eleanor's heart. Now, monthly family dinners had become a tradition, and they were beginning to build new relationships, overcoming past misunderstandings. "It's a special day, I couldn't possibly miss it," Eleanor smiled gently. A new respect for her daughter dwelled in her eyes. In the living room, Michael's parents were chatting amicably with young scholarship students. There was a warmth of true family that transcended blood ties. In the afternoon, at a small ceremony held in the garden, family and friends gathered along with key members of the company. Caroline and Michael announced the official launch of Hudson Scholars and the awarding of the first scholarships. When Brenda arrived late, she embraced her sister firmly. "Sis, you're really amazing," her voice held sincere admiration. "I'm glad I can be of some help." In the evening twilight of that day, Caroline stood alone on the garden terrace, watching the setting sun. Michael approached from behind and put his arm around her shoulders. "What are you thinking about?" he asked gently. "Happiness," Caroline answered from her heart. "The happiness of being able to be my true self." Around her, people who truly understood her value had gathered. Past conflicts had healed, and now a new family circle had formed with her at its center. Caroline smiled quietly. After a long journey, she had discovered the truth that family lies not in blood ties, but in understanding each other, recognizing value, and loving each other unconditionally.